Trayvon whispered into Tupac's ear right after we walked out of the Mike Tyson fight. And Pac took off running. I took off running behind him, and the rest of the entourage ran behind us.
Maybe that was a setup. I mean, he was standing there waiting and waiting for somebody, and then Tupac shows up, and they start exchanging words with his entourage and everybody else, and they start stomping and yelling and doing their silly things. But it was odd that, I keep saying odd, but the whole thing is odd. Yeah, Orlando Anderson looks a little staged. It looks a little planned out. It all looks as if they were trying to find a killer they could point out afterward.
We was blocked in. It was more than one shooter. Only person know the truth, the real truth, is me and Tupac.
It was already stalking Pac, like watching him. So that just took the iceberg when something happened. And that's why, like I said, I had two of the toughest guys for him. And Reggie pulled them off of me. And after it happened, I told him to send 5 guys from the club to there, and they never said nobody.
Yeah.
And Frank blocked his hand.
The arm came out, fired into the BMW, and myself and the 3 outlaws that was in the car with me, we are just in awe.
Later, it's learned that Trayvon was in the car that pinned Tupac's car from the left side on the street, blocking any escape when the shooting occurred.
This is a lie that I told back in the day. I told Frank Alexander to say that when they got out of the taxi club, when they arrived to the MGM, that Orlando Anderson was the guy who attempted to take his chain off his neck.
For security, I would say that if this car were not in the lead car, that would still give the middle car an avenue of escape. Then you have the car with the person in it, and then you have their backup. What also I see is this car in the left-hand turn lane, or to the left of the entourage.
Brennan testifies Trayvon is the person making the clearest and first claim that Anderson was the shooter. Trayvon is said to be telling people within hours of the shooting that Orlando Anderson is the one who shot Tupac. This is the same Trayvon who had the fight with Anderson in Lakewood, and the same one who instigated the fight at the MGM. If Trayvon's statement was to be believed by Brennan's affidavit, enough to justify the documentation of it, did Trayvon actually see Anderson in the car? The only way for Trayvon to have known that fact would have been to see the face of the shooter. So why wasn't he identified to police as an eyewitness? Whatever the case, in the face of the mounting physical evidence collected by Compton police, Anderson is not charged. Was Orlando Anderson a patsy? He can't tell us. He was killed 2 years later.
Believed Reggie Wright Jr. was involved in the killing of Orlando Anderson. He said Reggie Wright Jr.'s champagne-colored Chevy Blazer was a perfect match, fitting the description of the suspect vehicle described by more than one witness who made statements concerning the killing of Orlando Anderson. He also confirmed the presence of Kevin Gaines, David Mack, and Rafael Perez as special guest regulars of Suge Knight's private parties thrown for his inner circle. Both Reggie Wright Jr. and Suge Knight were and are very familiar with these men. Kevin Hackey was later identified as a confidential informant for the FBI.
Frank blocked his hand purposely. Later he told us at the streets. They told him to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, Frank got so bad he died, you know?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and Michael Moore.
Yeah. And then Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too.
Rafael Perez, on the force he liked to be called Ray, was a former partner of David Mack's.
They had been involved in an officer-involved shooting. in which Perez had claimed Mac had saved his life.
And that's when the name of Ray Perez and David Mack was connected, that they were good friends.
Perez is a good friend to David Mack, who both were good friends of Gaines. And I think the picture reflected that we had some people on this department that were, in a coordinated effort, involved in some very serious criminal misconduct.
See, because Perez and Reggie was good friends, and Perez and Sarita and Reggie is great friends.
But facts began to emerge about Kevin Gaines, that black officer who Liga took to be a menacing gangster.
After the shooting, there was 4 or 5 other witnesses that had called LAPD to report that this same officer, Gaines, had either badged or brandished his gun in similar road rage type incidents.
The investigation took detectives into Gaines' off-duty life.
While we were at the scene, we received a clue that Gaines had a girlfriend that lived in Hollywood Hills. And when we got there, it turned out that his girlfriend was Sharitha Knight, who was the estranged wife of the owner of Death Row Records.
Detectives discovered that Gaines was, as they say, living large for a guy on a policeman's salary. He had 9 credit cards in his wallet and a bill for $952 at Monty's Steakhouse, a preferred death row hangout.
Some of our officers, in working off duty, they were heavily involved in the whole hip-hop culture, providing security for many of the rappers that were involved with other kinds of crimes. These things began to reflect a completely different view of some of our personnel than we had before.
Investigators discovered that Ray Perez and David Mack were partners in the high life.
Perez and Reggie was good friends, and Perez and Sarita and Reggie is great friends, and so all those 3 together was trying to plot.
You know very little about Marion Suge Knight's partner in business. There are no pictures of this man circulating on the internet. He's a man in the shadows. That man's name is Reginald Wright Jr. Reggie Wright Jr. was clearly at the middle of the entire orchestration of the assassination, to be sure. However, one must look at the other elements that would have been involved. Reggie Wright Jr. was a former Compton police officer. His record as a police officer was short and unremarkable.
Reggie Wright used to work for Compton PD, yes. I know he has some type of medical retirement running Right Way Security. He was not working for Compton PD.
I have no relationship with Reggie Wright at this time, nor do I plan to.
My impression, my opinion of Reggie Wright Jr. was he's employed by Death Row Records to do a certain job. He's going to do what his employer has him do.
Reggie is not honest, and I want to leave it at that.
Reggie Wright Jr. tried to change the whole story of the narrative, what actually happened, and he was not there.
This is a lie that I told back in the day. I told Frank Alexander to say that when they got out of the taxi club, when they arrived to the MGM, that Orlando Anderson was the guy who attempted to take his chain off his neck. And Frank went along with that and told the Vegas PD that initially. Now, he eventually retracted once, the bitch came out of him. But I told y'all the reason that I did that is because I didn't know, and I believed that Tupac was going to survive. Me as a cop knows this. This is where both sides of the fence shit comes in with Reggie.
In these court documents, we learn that Wright was not only the acting general manager for Death Row, but was also agent of record for Death Row Records.
You're suing a corporation, at least in the state of Ohio, and I think just about every other jurisdiction. You have to have some person to serve process on, and that person, again, in the state of Ohio, is someone that's designated, and the record is on file at the Secretary of State's office as to the person who the service would be placed upon.
These lawsuit transcripts also show that Wright had the authority of managing witnesses and financial arrangements on Knight's behalf. We also know that Wright had the off-duty police departments of Los Angeles, Compton, and Las Vegas at his disposal. If this seems to be a lot of responsibility and power, consider the fact that Wright was in charge of security for death row's most valuable asset at the time. Shakur was killed while Wright was in charge, and he was given a promotion when most security agents would not have a job.
She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card. She placed the business card down next to one of the surveillance photographs depicting the suspect, and she pointed to both, at which time I picked it up, and it was a Los Angeles Police Department business card. I saw that it was a person by the name of David Mack, which, needless to say, shocked us. It took our breath away. I excused myself and took the business card and exited the interview room.
David Mack was arrested. He refused to cooperate with the police.
We didn't know until later that he'd made a trip to Las Vegas 2 days after the bank robbery.
How'd you find out about that?
We were talking to his wife, who had mentioned that he had said he had gone to Las Vegas. She said he had won a substantial amount of money in Las Vegas at that time. And we were able to determine that two of the people he had gone to Las Vegas with were also Los Angeles police officers.
The other two checked out clean. David Mack was convicted and in jail underwent a particular kind of transformation.
He's in custody, Los Angeles County Jail, and we're getting reports back that he is attiring himself with red socks, red items that distinguish association with the Blood Gang. And we'd also received word from jailers that he had said he is a Blood gang member.
Now a disturbing pattern had begun to present itself. Officer Kevin Gaines, tied to death row. Off-duty cops involved in the gangster rap scene. David Mack, renouncing the LAPD and coming out as a Blood gang member.
Through interviews of former police officers that worked in the death row organization, Mack and Gaines were identified as confidants of Suge Knight, the owner of Death Row Records. They were present during private death row parties, and that's where first time that we were able to really make the connection between those two.
And when detectives had searched Mack's home, in the garage, they'd found a black Chevy Impala SS and something else.
He also had a shrine of Tupac Shakur, posters and memorabilia of Tupac Shakur all through the garage.
A dark Chevy and Tupac Shakur were, it turns out, part of another mystery.
So we see a picture of Rafael Perez in this 211 suit, making hand signs that depicted a specific Blood group of gangs on the West Coast.
Trayvon whispered into Tupac's ear right after we walked out of the Mike Tyson fight. And Pac took off running. I took off running behind him, and the rest of the entourage ran behind us.
Maybe that was a setup. I mean, he was standing there waiting and waiting for somebody. And then Tupac shows up, and they start exchanging words with his entourage and everybody else, and they start stomping and yelling and doing their silly things. But it was odd that, I keep saying odd, but the whole thing is odd.
I'm like, damn. If Tupac survived the gunshot, if he survived these gunshots, he's going straight back to prison, because he was out on their appeal bond. And I said, I got to give David Kidder and them a defense. Some reason for them to at least argue to why Tupac ran over there and jumped on Orlando Anderson. So my mind get to thinking and rolling, and I said, okay, well, if we can say this guy attempted to rob him or take his chain from around his neck, and he observed him, attempted, and he observed him, that's why he ran over there and did what he did, because he had no reason in the world. I know all you Tupac fans and all of that love Pac, and y'all look through him through rose gold glasses, and he can't do no wrong. But goddamn, Reggie Wright called a ball, a strike a strike. Tupac and Shakur had no reason in the world, none, to go over there and put his hands on Orlando Anderson.
The fact that Reggie Wright Sr. and Reggie Wright Jr. are involved in this case, in my mind at least, creates a classic conflict of interest. And it's something that anyone looking at this case, I think, should be aware of.
Prior to going into the meeting with Suge and all the artists from Death Row, Reggie met with us out front in his own meeting and instructed us to say certain things. And when I got into the meeting, it was a meeting the meeting was basically about what happened. And the artists were drilling security about what methods we had used and what were some of our tactics. I looked around and no one said it. No one was speaking up for security. So I seen it was more, and I've been in these type of meetings before, even at the fire station. It's almost like similar to a political type meeting of far the higher, of what was going on. So I was one of the few people that spoke up and said, wait a minute, we were instructed not to carry weapons.
Brennan goes on to mention that on September 16, 1996, there was a meeting between Compton police and Las Vegas detectives. Eager to share what they have found and their likely suspect, they learned that a .40 caliber shell was found at the shooting scene. They also learned that the weapon was thought to be a Glock. Within 3 days, Compton PD wins the informant lottery, finding an informant who just so happens to know that Orlando Anderson had a Glock 40.
Zip gave you guys a Glock, and you guys tossed it in the back seat. And Bubble Up was the driver, and Baby Lane and Freaky were in the back seat.
We was just all in the car together.
Now remember, there was no mention of a Glock in the cache of weapons recovered from that mysterious duffel bag.
Now, there were so many holes in this story. I always say the truth makes sense. Other things don't make sense, and you can find holes. And that thing was just rife with holes.
If you take Trayvon's credibility away as an eyewitness, what is there? Enough inflammatory statements to incite a gang war.
But my thinking was, this would give David Kenner a defense. Say that he went over there and ran over there and was trying to subdue, I don't know, the person that just that attempted to rob him earlier that day, and he observed him. And that's why he did that. It's the only reason I can think of.
His childhood friendship with Knight was one part of the attraction. But he had one asset that made a relationship with him even more attractive: his father. Reggie Wright Sr. was on the Compton Police Department's gang detail and is still employed by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Unlike the notorious reputation of his son, Reggie Wright Sr. has remained a well-respected and revered member of the Compton police scene. His father's status as a conduit to the gang population may have given Reggie Jr. a unique first-hand relationship with the same gang leaders that knew his father.
They're setting someone else to take up the blame for their action. That's also a very ingenious part of the plan to be able to do that, is the fact that now not only can I take out my intended victim, but I can make it look like somebody else had the same motive and opportunity to do the same act.
And why go to all that trouble to stage this kind of event? Certainly Anderson could have been dealt with more discreetly. Knight went to prison over a beating, a parole violation. But in the poker game of crime, 9 years beats life. It also plays towards setting up the final alibi and cover story.
So you guys are driving around, and then you hear these girls say, Tupac, Tupac.
No, we coming up, what's the name? What's that, Flamingo? Yeah, I think that's Flamingo. We was coming up Flamingo and got to the light. We was going to go drink and smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He's hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Keep in mind, where the actual shooting happened isn't as full of pedestrian traffic as it would be out on the strip. The shooting happened off the strip. A lot of people think it was right on the main drag, and it wasn't. And you don't have the foot traffic where this happened that you do where
On September 8, 1996, Suge Knight does not go to his home to rest. Instead, he does a strange thing. He leaves town. Trayvon also leaves town. Suge Knight and Trayvon go back to L.A. Their goal, start a cover story and a gang war.
Later, it's learned that Trayvon was in the car that pinned Tupac's car from the left side on the street, blocking any escape when the shooting occurred.
Trayvon whispered into Tupac's ear right after we walked out of the Mike Tyson fight.
Still today, a 45 bullet an inch to my skull. You can look at my medical records and see the x-rays and see it's in my skull.
Suge didn't have a... Look, unless Suge got a bullet in his head after that night, the nurse said to us he got hit with a piece of shrapnel, maybe a piece of glass. Right?
You're right.
Why would the nurse wouldn't say that if dude had a bullet in his head?
Pac hated Reggie Wright Jr., so he had fired him before any of that. I don't know the right date, but I'm quite sure it was. It's paperwork that shows it. But the crazy thing about that, it was a bodyguard named Frank Alexander. Pac hated Frank.
Frankie! Yo, Frankie!
No! He records this fool.
What? Y'all call him Frankie? Nah, we gonna call him Frankie.
Only our family call us that. Call me that
shit forever now. What y'all call him? Frankie. Now we call him Frankie. Yo, Frankie, we got him, y'all. Frankie Knuckles. Frankie Knuckles up in this one. No, Frankie Knuckles.
No, what I do wrong? What y'all call him? For real, straight up. For real.
Frank. But now the E sound real, actually, because you know Frank a little extra sexy and you know, too sexy for some sleeves.
He was cool at first, but towards the end he hated Frank because Frank always wanted to get into pictures with Tupac. And Tupac was very militant, so he was like, man, I don't want a bodyguard taking pictures with me. How is he watching my back if he getting himself in the pictures? So I hired a guy named Michael Moore and told him to bring another off-duty police officers because they kept their gun and they was real aggressive by protecting Tupac.
Knight entrusted the protection of the artist to former and current police officers and fire department officials. Of course, not all of the police hired by Reggie Wright were model citizens. The arrests of David Mack and Rafael Perez showed a new level of corruption in the LA Police Department, and both were on death row's payroll.
Them looking for the Cadillac and doing the things that they should have done to find that Cadillac. Obviously, they weren't fast enough and didn't get, to finding it because it was never found.
Compton police claim to have identified this Cadillac as the shooter's vehicle. It was a rental car, the only white Cadillac rented in Los Angeles that weekend. Las Vegas police claimed they never received that information.
Then Gaddafi came up to me and Gaddafi said, "Low." I said, "What happened?" Gaddafi said, "Low, it was a white Cadillac." And he said, "Man, it was a light-skinned dude, looked something like you." Low stuck his hand out the window and started busting. This is what Gaddafi told me. And the reason why I remember it so good, because he said, "Low, he was light-skinned like you."
Yafufula was a name that a lot of people have thrown back in our faces that we were derelict in doing things. Yafufula was interviewed the night of the shooting. Yafufula gave a statement. People say we never interviewed him. He was interviewed. And the big thing is everybody says that he said he could identify the shooter. No, he did not. He never said that to us. He said he might be able to identify the driver. That is what he said. Malcolm Greenidge said he could identify the shooter. We finally tracked him down to set up a re-interview, and he says, "I'm not going to look at any photos because I can't identify him." Yeah, we got beat up in the LA Times over that. And I'm thinking, okay, put up or shut up, Ace. And, well, but again, Reggie Wright Jr. is the one that brought him to that interview.
I'm definitely just putting the puzzle pieces on the table with this one. It's crazy how one of the biggest pieces of the story is possibly a lie. The narrative been Orlando tried to take somebody death row chain for years, and a lot of people actually believe it, but Reggie clearly told Frank to lie about the situation. Definitely sounds like a narrative being pushed, with this one bringing back some characters that disappeared from story, and that's the crook cops. One thing I didn't know about the cops was they were actually blood members. It makes you wonder if they were connected to Suge Knight or Reggie Wright or both. Suge Knight said they targeted him too, but I don't know. It seems like Suge Knight does lie, like him saying Frank blocked him in, but he was in the back of them in the car with the outlaws. Another questionable thing is him saying he took head trauma. I know Suge Knight, he act like some big tough guy, but taking a head injury and walking around the next day is crazy. Who is supposed to be the Terminator or something? It is the classic playbook. Repeat a story enough times and the culture treats it like gospel. For years, the legend of the old confrontation has been used to anchor the entire motive, giving people a neat packaged reason for what went down. But when you start looking at the actual logistics and who was whispering in whose ear, telling Frank straight up what to say, the foundation starts to split. It is less about what actually happened on the street and more about who needed that specific story to stick to protect themselves. Bringing the corrupted officers back into the frame changes the entire geometry of the board. These weren't just standard crook cops running protection. Reports and deep dive investigations have pointed straight to active gang affiliations within the department. When you have law enforcement personnel operating with direct ties to street sets, the lines between protecting the public and enterprise level coordination blur completely. The real question nobody wants to answer out loud: were these officers freelancing, or were they taking direct cues from the top of death row, working as an extension of the security apparatus tied to Reggie Wright or Suge Knight? If law enforcement and high-level security are moving in tandem, ordinary street beefs start looking a lot more like state-sanctioned or corporate-level setups. We have to keep it all the way real about Suge Knight's version of events, because the math simply does not add up when you pick it apart piece by piece. The blockade myth: Suge Knight claimed Frank blocked him in, but eyewitness testimony and positioning from the outlaws in the back vehicle tell a completely different story. The head trauma miracle, let's be honest, getting grazed or clipped is one thing, but claiming you took severe head damage and walking around the next day like nothing happened turns mythology into science fiction. Suge loves playing the indestructible Iron Man, but even the Terminator had to get repaired. When the guy telling the story is constantly editing the script to fit his own legend, you have to strip away the theater and look strictly at the movement of the pieces. That is the real puzzle here. On one side, you have manufactured motives designed to pin everything on a convenient target. On the other, you have institutional corruption operating in plain sight with ties to the inner circle. The official story has too many holes, too many convenient lies, and too many characters acting as if they had a script to follow. As always, when you follow the paper trail, the power trail, and the silence of the people who suddenly vanished from the timeline, the truth looks a whole lot different than what they sold on television.